They're working hard.
Friends, we are going to begin the funeral service for Mr. Barry Michael David. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it in the silent mode at this time or turn it completely off. I'd also like to welcome everyone via live stream. On behalf of the family, thank you for attending. Services will be conducted by Rabbi Richard Prass of Congregation Betham.
Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid ki mimeni balamot, lachen samach libi vayagel kivodi. We read in the Psalm 16, I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice, my being is secure. For you, God, will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful ones see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. Adonai ma adam v'tadehu ben enosh v'tachshavehu. Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, but in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to return to dust, saying, Return, O mortal creatures, would that we were wise, that we understood where we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Therefore, mark the wholehearted in our lives, and behold the upright. Those are the ones that shall have peace. Death has taken our beloved Barry Michael David. Our friends grieve in their darkened world, and in their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness, lost in their sorrow. May they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Barry's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, it's customary to listen to the voice of sacred scriptures, which bring us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with our Creator, in light and now as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. No set of words, no verses from Scripture have been more with our people than the 23rd Psalm. I'll read a little bit of it in Hebrew, and in a moment I'll invite you to join with me in the English on the inside of your leaflet. Adonai roi lo echsar binotesha yarbitzeni al me menuchot yanchileni. Nafshi yeshovev yanchini b'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember him. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember him. So long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. In Kohelet, the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, we read the following words. The eye never has its fill of seen. It's to teach us that young or old, those who depart this life, they never see enough of the world. They never complete their task. They never cherish their loved ones enough before they are called home. How they yearn for yet another respite from this final summons, and how we each yearned to have them close to us for yet another challenge in our lives, yet another joy, yet another precious moment. God, be now with those whose hearts are broken, because whenever parting comes, it comes too soon. Console them at this hour, be near to them when light seems distant. Sustain them, O God, until their time of healing. In the book of Job, we read that he cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be that name of God. We'll pause for a few moments for private prayers, private meditations, and our own personal remembrances of Barry. May the words and meditations of our mouths and our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. For Jews around the world, the Torah portion being read today and throughout this entire week is Shalach Lecha. It tells of how our ancestors looked ahead into their future journey. While the Israelites of the Torah encamped, they sent out scouts to look at what lied ahead, what lay in front of them. The majority of the scouts came back and they reported huge obstacles, difficulties in their path. 2 of the scouts came back and reported hope and promise. Today we gather to bring Barry Michael David to his final resting place. His loved ones may feel like those Israelites who listened to the scouts with reports of obstacles ahead in their future, filled with heaviness, with dread, with sadness. While he battled muscular dystrophy for too many years, his death still came too soon. He leaves behind so many who yearn for more years of wonderful memories. The beloved husband of Charlotte for 38 and a half years, loving father of Hannah and Erik, devoted and proud Zadie of Lily, dear brother of Myrna, Jim McDonald, late Donald and Sandi, Martin David, Sheila, and Al. He was devoted son of the late Robert and Lorraine, and cherished uncle, cousin, and friend of so many. None of you wanted to be here this soon. In this week's Torah portion, the scouts returned with stories filled with challenges, and some of those scouts returned with stories that promised light through those obstacles. So the question is, how do we find light when we are faced with this heavy news, this painful news of losing a cherished friend and dear family member? Our tradition points us, it leads us to return and report to one another, to scout out for each other the wonderful stories that made up Barry's life. So let us take a few moments here in this space, in this time, to be like those two scouts who returned with stories of his life and promise of those stories, giving us just a little bit of light in this moment. Charlotte, your story with Barry began when your respective mothers set you up at synagogue. Both of your mothers were active at the same synagogue, so at age 25, they thought it would be a really good idea to get you two together. Barry called you up and asked if you had a sense of adventure and if you'd take a chance on that date. You bought a new outfit as a way of affirming that it would be worth it for this adventure. When he picked you up, he looked around and he was impressed. The record albums, and most importantly, the White Sox hat in your apartment. Now, according to some of the family legend experts, you came home from that first date and you told your friends you found that guy, the guy. Dating went smoothly with only one exception. On the proposal, when you were confused, or some might say didn't understand that he was actually proposing to you in the moment. And together you built a beautiful life, going from Skokie to Wheeling to Buffalo Grove. Now, the scouts in the Torah portion surely would come back and they would report that Barry was an adoring father to you, Hannah. He loved you so much. And you loved how he was a hands-on dad. When you played soccer, he might not have been able to fit in the time to be your full-time coach, but he helped out a lot because, quote, he knew more than the other coaches. He taught you how to score baseball games. He taught you how to swim because when others tried to teach you, he knew how to teach you better than those actual swimming teachers. He also taught you how to drive, giving you two unique rules that perhaps none of us here should ever repeat in practice. 9 miles over the speed limit, okay. 10, not okay. And secondly, if there is no one in the street, take up as much room as you want when you're the one driving. So many wonderful stories with your father, Hannah, and he was proud of you and he loved you so dearly. And you brought into your father's life, you brought Erik. Erik, you asked Barry and Shar for permission to marry Hannah, and before Shar had even processed the conversation, Barry basically interrupted and said, yes. He loved you. Your wedding day gave Barry even more bucket list goals. He now had dreams, and he worked towards that dream of walking you, Hannah, down the aisle and dancing with you at your wedding. And he worked for it, and he did. Erik, you remember your father-in-law sharing stories with you, even if he had repeated them and repeated them and repeated them. He adored you, calling you Sonny Boy. You enjoyed sports together, and he worked on being physically well enough to play golf with you. And you, Erik, you listened to all those stories, even if he repeated, and maybe repeated them again. But you listened wisely enough to hear that there was a common thread through all those stories, and that thread was his loving and beautiful family. He was a character. He was a sports fanatic who knew facts, in particular, all of the Chicago sports teams, maybe not the Cubs, though. He created a blog on Chicago sports, and he turned that blog into a family event, a family endeavor, I think might be a better word, because most of his posts needed a lot of proofreading, since he enjoyed typing just like he talked. He loved movies. Star Wars was his favorite science fiction, Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, Three Stooges, Hitchcock movies, and Mel Brooks. And if you hadn't seen one of his movies, there would be a little bit of judgment in his response and a firm invitation, maybe insistence, to watch it with him soon. He was chatty. Whether he heard the beginning of the conversation, he joined in to chat with you. He created so many wonderful memories, packed in 67 too short years. Were the ancient Israelite scouts of the Torah to come back and report, they would see his life, and we would all know that surely he was good, and he brought light into this world and into the lives of everyone who touched him. We don't need to imagine what the scouts of ancient Torah portions would say. When I met with some of the family, when I met with you just a few days ago, those stories flowed from your memories, first a little bit slowly, but then so fast-paced, filled with playful, joyful love. Charlotte, Hannah, and Erik, your faces found glimpses of light and smiles as you shared many lovely stories of this character of a man. Because this man, this husband, this father and grandfather, was such a character in life. So our job is to continue to share the stories of his life already shared, and to certainly share those stories which you might not have heard yet. And all of us have a responsibility to share these stories with Lily. He lived a life filled with love and family. We would be wise to learn from it and share it with all those that we know and care for. Then we would further his life, and his memory becomes an eternal blessing. Zichrono levracha, may his memory always be a blessing. Ken yehi ratzon, may it be God's will. And let us all say, Amen. To share additional memories and to be like those scouts from the Torah portion, to share additional memories, we'll call forward in this order his sister Myrna, friend Elliot Becker, and son-in-law Erik.
My baby brother Barry was a hero. He lived with a degenerative disease for many years, but in my presence and in our phone conversations, he always had a smile, a positive attitude, and a joy for life. What gave him his greatest joys were his new baby granddaughter, Lily, his wife, Charlotte, who just a couple weeks ago he told me she was a saint, his beloved daughter, Hannah, his warm and nurturing son-in-law, Erik, not to mention the pleasure he had in the company of our niece Melissa, her husband Paul, their boys, and all his extended family. Barry also talked about his friends, Elliot and Justin, and the depth of their friendships. Relationships were paramount to Barry. I'll never forget how devoted he was to our mother, especially during the last few months of her life. He would visit her on the way home from work every day. He showed a similar dedication to our father in his later years, although Barry and our dad had a challenging relationship. It seems like it might have started when our dad cut off Barry's long hair because he thought he looked too much like a hippie. Barry also kept in touch with our Uncle Mel. In recent years, when I came to town, Barry, Char, Mel, my husband Jim, and I would go out to lunch and catch up on family lore. As most of you probably know, and as the rabbi mentioned, Barry was a veteran sports fan. He and Melissa's son, Braden, talked on the phone regularly about sports news. He used to write a blog about the Chicago teams, and I can't remember a single positive word he had to say about those teams. I often thought to myself, why not move to the Bay Area and you can follow the Warriors, Giants, and 49ers? But Barry was a Chicago guy. He once told me he would never leave the Chicago area, and he was true to his word. Last summer, after we celebrated the New York wedding of my cousin Alyssa's daughter, Barry and Char drove to the Baseball Hall of Fame. My favorite photo of Barry is him in front of the building in a wheelchair, a big smile on his face, and his hands held high as if to say, I did it, I got here. Barry was a role model for how to make the best of life, even with significant physical challenges. I will miss our visits, our phone calls, and his quirky sense of humor. I want to thank my sister-in-law, Charlotte, for being such a devoted partner during these many, many difficult times. I love you, Char.
Well, so far, I haven't been able to get through this once. when I'm reading it to myself, so please forgive me in advance. How do you sum up a life in just a few minutes? I first met Barry when he was 19, and I was just about to turn 18. That's 48 years ago. Justin and I, who was my roommate and is also here, met Barry at Illini Towers during our freshman year. We've all been close ever since. Of course, perhaps we were destined to be friends. You see, Barry's parents, Bob and Lorraine, went to high school with my dad. I mean, what are the chances of that? They were both students at Manly High School on the west side. Barry, please say hi to them when you get there. During the ensuing years at U of I, I'll just share a couple of stories because it could take a few hours. One day we were in Barry's car, and we were driving around at night, and all of a sudden the dreaded flashing red lights came on behind us. Cop pulls us over. Barry rolls down the window, and the cop says to Barry, "You eat a lot of carrots?" And Barry's like, "Well, yeah, I do. Why?" And he said, "Well, you're driving without your lights on, so maybe you don't need glasses." Barry's sense of humor with the officer basically allowed us to skate away. It also reminded me of a story that Barry always shared with me about his dad. You know, we're on Ridge Road where it turns into Peterson and you got the arrows? Well, one time Bob was driving and he turned onto Peterson Road, and once again the flashing lights came on, and the officer said, "Didn't you see the arrows?" And Bob said, "Didn't even see the Indians." Like I said, the acorn did not fall too far from the oak. It was at college that we really got close, and our lives together paralleled each other. I got married on September 29th, 1985. Barry and Charlotte less than 3 months later in December. We moved to the suburbs and lived no more than 2 miles apart at any given time. We moved to Deerfield, they moved to Wheeling. We moved to Buffalo Grove, they moved to Buffalo Grove. I moved again in Buffalo Grove, they moved again in Buffalo Grove. I was really trying to get them to move to Atlanta, but that's not going to happen. So on June 23rd, 1988, my son Mike was born, and Hannah was born just 6 months later on January 30th, 89. It went on and on. The kids even became friends, and we would, every summer, or a few times in the summer, we would go to New Buffalo, Michigan, where Justin's girlfriend, Laura, had a home. And Barry and Char and my wife at the time, Sharon, and I would dream about Hannah and Mike. You know, maybe that could be a thing. Needless to say, the best made dreams sometimes don't work out. We even trick-or-treated together when the kids were little. I remember my family were all dressed as Dalmatians. I'm not sure what Hannah wore. A witch, a rabbit? I forget what we just... What? A cat. That we decided that last night. A cat was what Hannah wore. But I do remember Barry, which I guess is his perennial costume. It was a clown, giant big red nose. Needless to say, life changes and gets more complicated, but we got closer and closer. And as pretty much everybody has said so far, Barry is a huge sports fan. And so am I. The three of us had tickets together for the Bulls for many years. We got to see all their championships. But I think my biggest memory was when we finally got past the Detroit Pistons to make it to the finals in 1991. And I just remember I have this vision of Justin, because he lived on the south side, and Barry and I, because we lived in the better part of town, just sitting in the parking lot, just basking in the glory of the win. And even to the very last minute, Justin, who lives in Vancouver, Washington, and I, who live in Atlanta, every Bulls game, every single Bulls game, we were on the phone texting each other about every play that was going on. And we've heard about this thing about the White Sox. Not a White Sox fan here. I am a diehard Cub fan. But remarkably, given the quality of the teams that we both rooted for, his passion never subsided. Each time the Sox lost, at the end of the game, each time the Sox lost in a game in infuriating fashion, we'd receive a text message complaining about Tony La Russa or the Sox bullpen. And actually, last night, when we were over at Char's house, I was looking at my old texts and we were reading them out loud. Bullpen is the worst bullpen in the league. Bullpen is terrible. Kopech stinks. On and on and on. Also, diehard Illinois sports fans and diehard football fans. And both Justin and I were also co-editors of the blog. And Barry would be like, my blog came out, read it, read it, read it. And he wouldn't stop bothering me until I read it. Something else Barry and I had in common was our love for music. Barry's favorite artists were Graham Parker, who probably 80% of this audience has never heard of, and Squeeze. Between Char and I, we must have taken Barry to see Graham Parker a dozen times, maybe more, and he loved it. He just loved it. And Barry also has a very, very enviable investment in vinyl. And I think that all of that, kind of informed Hannah's interest not only in music, but in her future husband. And, if you marry a music guy, you got to have some chops. So Hannah was well trained. Among the others that we saw were Bruce Springsteen, Neil Young, Wilco, and our special favorite, the Kinks. During our last few shows, Barry got special seating, and he loved sharing that with us. I asked my wife, Sue, if she can recall anything to help me with this. After having 2 kids, my marriage ended, and I was dating Sue. So the first time I get together with Barry and Char, Barry is questioning her like a Jim Rockford investigation. Now, I had to bring that up because Barry's favorite show of all time is The Rockford Files. 8 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 3 in the morning. He's always watching Rockford. So had to get that in there somehow. Anyway, apparently Barry was questioning her because he wanted to make sure that she was right for me. So here's where it starts to fall apart. Barry, you were a great judge. We moved to Atlanta a little over a year ago, but a situation in my family required that I return home with some regularity. And notice I do call it home. Like family, Barry and Char let me stay in their house. They even gave me their car. And I even got a key to the house. Fortunately, I was flying, so I couldn't take any of the china back. I just, And anyway, in retrospect, I would come and I would stay for 3 or 4 days. And it was like a gift. I mean, I would be there every morning and I'd be there every night. And Char could get a break. And Barry and I would probably watch the White Sox or the Bulls or whatever sporting event was on and yell at each other because that's what my first reaction to hearing was, who am I going to argue with now? So anyway, I'm going off script now. We talked a lot, and at least when I could overcome, the fireplace turned up to 80 degrees. And I got to tell him a lot that I loved him. And he got to tell me that. And that's a really precious gift, because you don't really get to say that to your friends very often. Obviously, none of us saw this coming. Barry did great work. He was super courageous. He tried everything. Hannah was telling me yesterday that he dropped about 40 pounds just to give himself a better chance. And he did accomplish 2 amazing things. He got to be at your wedding, Hannah, and even kick his feet up at the end of the walk. And then Erik and Hannah, he got to see Lily. Boy, he loved her. Shar, you're amazing. I think what you had to deal with, you never did in an angry way. It's always loving. You pushed him to live as long as he could, and he lived every bit of it, and he was really very happy. Hannah, so proud of you. Thank you for giving Barry these gifts. I think before I lose it, I'm going to end it there, but I'm going to miss you, friend.
Thank you, Rabbi. And I wanted to say thank you so much to everybody for being here today on this unfortunate day and occasion. Barry and I met after I first met Hannah, and I was very fortunate to feel the love that he gave right off the bat. Of course, it didn't come until he asked me if I was, one, a Packers fan, which I nervously said yes. And secondly, if I wore a cheese hat, which I said no, which he said good. From that point on, I felt that he always accepted me as his son, even despite us not being married for several years after that. I'll always miss the times that I would come over to the house and help him with doing something to give Shar a break, or just sitting down and listening for hours on end to the history of the White Sox or the history of the Blackhawks or whatever was playing that day. I may or may not have tuned out some of the Bears information. However, despite that, he was always willing to discuss my teams that I enjoyed with me. A lot of times, sometimes I felt that he knew more about them than even I did. But it showed it was a testament to basically how he was and how much he cared about us and his family, just to sit and have a conversation with you and in a very selfless manner. I wish that we would have been able to play golf. I know that was one of his goals. But I was so thankful to be able to have him for our wedding and also be able to introduce him to our daughter, Lily, who we love very much. He will be very sorely missed. I have some words here that I'd like to say on behalf of Hannah, his daughter. I had a great relationship with my dad. I will always remember the things he taught me and the love he gave me. Every weekend, my parents and I listened to Breakfast with the Beatles. It was our Sunday morning tradition. I learned to love the music and enjoyed it just as much as my dad did. I learned a lot from my dad. I get my love of sports and Chicago teams from my dad. I loved how passionate he was, whether the team was good or bad. He still watched because he loved the games. He taught me to keep score at baseball games, copy the Bulls, Sox announcers' catchphrases, like, "Give me the hot sauce," and You can put it on the board, yes. And he had so much enjoyment from me creating my own catchphrases and always remembered Devin Hester, in fact, was dangerous. I love being with him and being able to talk about anything with him. With him. And he was always supportive. When it came to my wedding, he wanted to give me the best, and I was so grateful. He got to walk me down the aisle, dance, and give his toast. He had been preparing for a year. I love that he embraced my husband and his family, and truly enjoyed all their company. I'll miss our late nights playing board games, despite him always winning Scrabble. I'll miss his jokes and repeated stories about his mom, brothers, and sister. He truly enjoyed being with his friends and family, and most of all, he loved every minute he spent with Lily, whether watching her in the bath or reading The Wonky Donkey, which is a book. He had many struggles, but his love of his family and friends kept him going. He worked so hard and overcame so much to spend time with us. And while I wish he had it easier, I love the fact that he tried and continued day after day despite his difficulties. He was so brave, and he kept his head high and really had a positive, happy outlook. I just hope I have some of his many qualities and traits, and he'll continue to live on for all of us. I love you, and I miss you always. Thank you.
Such beautiful and important stories, and we know with everyone here in person and online, there's so many more stories. Please continue to share them with each other, with the immediate family, because it's so important, and because, as I learned, he liked to tell stories again and again and again, and it's a way of honoring his memory and who he was. Into your care we entrust the spirit of our beloved Barry Michael David. For you, God, keep faith with your children in death as in life. Sustain us that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, God, are with us, a loving friend in whom we put our trust. You are the light of our life, our hope in eternity. The final prayer that we'll say here in this space is titled El Mele Rachamim. It's called God Full of Mercy, and it turns to God with this very physical, anthropomorphic, and that word's not going to come out right now, metaphor of God having either a loving wing or a loving arm. And in it we ask God, please take our beloved one, our beloved Barry Michael David, and embrace him in your wing, in your arm. If you're able, please rise. El Mele Rachamim Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Im Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Shahalach LaOlamo Baal Harachamim Yastirehu Beseter Kenafav LaOlamim Veitzror Bitzror HaChayim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'Yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'Nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Barry Michael David, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us all say, Amen.
This concludes the service here at the chapel. The family will be sitting Shiva starting on their return from the cemetery back here at the chapel in the other room. There'll be a luncheon. They should be back here by about 1 o'clock or so and start the Shiva portion here at the chapel. And then they will continue sitting Shiva at the David residence tonight until 9 p.m. and then Tuesday and Wednesday from 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. on both of those days. That information is on your folders as well as on our website, so you can check the details there. Interment will take place at Waldheim Cemetery in Forest Park. The procession will be forming in the parking lot. Please keep in mind a few safety features while in the procession. Keep your bright headlights on at all times. Put your emergency blinkers on. Attach the orange funeral sticker to the passenger portion of your front windshield. And we will also attach a flag to the roof of your car. And please stay as close as safety permits to the car in front of you. The following people have been selected to serve as pallbearers when I call your name if you come forward. Erik Burtraw, Stephen Libfeld, Scott McDonald, Josh Topper, and Paul DiGiangi. At this time, I would ask that everyone please rise as the rabbi and the family are escorted from the chapel.